started that the Federal Reserve is an issue in this presidential election. But the intellectual revolution now is in place, and we're reacting to that, and I think that's the hard work. But we are further along than I ever dreamed. Let me tell you, I always worked on the assumption that maybe I could vote and try to set my standard the best I can, and maybe somebody in later years would look and say, yeah, I think he understood what was going on. But believe me, the revolution is alive and well and growing by leaps and bounds. Looks like truly it is an idea whose time has come, and armies will not stop us, nor will the government stop us. You know, in the 1960s they had a saying that if you weren't a bleeding heart liberal when you were 20, you didn't have a heart. And then they also said that if you weren't a good conservative by the time you were 40, you didn't have a brain. And I'm suggesting that the freedom movement has both a heart and a brain at the same time. But a true revolution should have high standards and high ideals and high goals that we have to strive for something that seems almost impossible. And it seemed to me that it was impossible. I think it's possible now. I really believe it is possible for you as a generation to bring about the changes in a very positive way. So, but the striving for what seems to be impossible is key. But it does require passion. It does require the emotions and people to get charged up and involved and take it upon themselves. This is what's happening around the country. Individuals throughout the country aren't getting directions from me or our campaign, but they're spontaneously getting involved, and they're doing the thing that they want to do, and they get very much involved. But this revolution is involved with not only passion but reason. And this is important. It isn't the fact that just we have the energy, but we have to answer the questions. We have to answer the questions why the foreign policy is wrong. Answer the question why central banking is wrong. Why it's silly to have paper money and not sound money. And why the entitlement system helps the wealthy, not the poor. You have to have those answers, and we can win if we get that information out. And it is true that the harder and the more difficult the conflict seems, the greater the sense of satisfaction is when we win. And this will be tedious. It will not be easy. If you could just wave a wand and it would be over, if you could elect one person and a week later have all these changes made, it's not going to happen that way. But the seeds have been planted. There is no way that they can silence the freedom movement today. It is going to be heard from. Freedom that I think is so important. I have many times said that freedom is popular. And there's a very good reason why it's popular, because when it is popular, it means it should be popular with everybody. Freedom shouldn't benefit one class of people or one group of people. It should benefit all of us, and it should bring people together. Not because we know what people should do with their lives or how to spend their money, but precisely the opposite. But we should be able to come together because of the diversity. Because we want to protect diversity. We want people to have their own lifestyles and not be told how to run their own lives. And of course, in the economic sphere, we want people to have the incentive to work hard and save and spend the money they want. But the big problem is some people might not do a very good job, and that's what invites the do-gooder, the nanny state mentality to come in and say, well, he won't take care of himself, we have to do it, and he might use his freedom in a certain way, and we have to make sure that we look after him. Yes, in a free society there will be some of that, but think about it when the politician and the bureaucrat makes a decision and they make a wrong decision because they can't possibly know what is best for you or how to spend your money. So when they do make the decision, it does harm for all of us. So that is why you want the individuals to make their own decision about their own lives and their own money. One other problem with freedom because people will misuse it. The one rule is you can't ever use it to hurt anybody else. But the other thing is that people are conditioned to believe that if you legalize freedom of choice on what you put in your mouth or what you put in your lungs and what you eat and all these things, that means you endorse what they do. But that's not true. You don't endorse what people do with their freedoms. We don't endorse religious freedom. Some people have various religions. Some people have no religion. But we don't, because we have freedom of religion, we don't endorse it. Intellectually, we don't say, well, we have freedom to study whatever we want. But that doesn't mean we endorse what people read or what they do. But unfortunately, for now, quite a few years, 100 years maybe, we have gotten this notion that if we allow people to make up their own minds about what they put in their bodies, it could be wrong and therefore we have to regulate. It's gotten to such a point now where you are losing your right to decide whether or not you can drink raw milk. I think in a free society, you ought to be able to smoke what you want and drink what you want. And if you do any harm to anybody else, you're in big trouble. If you do harm to yourself, you have to suffer the consequences and you can't go begging for help from your neighbor. Drugs are very dangerous. And I admonish my children and my grandchildren to be very, very cautious because they are very dangerous and people can get addicted. But I also know that the war on drugs has been much more damaging to our liberties and it hurts everybody than the drugs themselves. Yeah. And also, if you're worried about addiction, what are you going to do about the addiction of prescription drugs? That's where the real problems are. Yeah. So we have to have more confidence in ourselves. We have lost confidence in believing that freedom works and that freedom is a solution, that people might misuse their freedoms. So we need more confidence, but we need a better understanding, because when they tell you, well, this freedom is a good thing, but it's only going to help the rich, which is wrong. It's the system we have today that helps the rich at the punishment of the poor. The entitlement system doesn't work. So what we want is a fairer system, which means that the incentive system works and allows people to work hard and take care of themselves and get the benefit and the satisfaction of taking care of oneself. That's what we need again. The ultimate goals in life are something very personal. Some people might not have much goals at all. Some people might want to be educated and they might not want to work. But ultimately, I think most people who care about society and care about their fellow man, people want to strive, in my estimation, at least that's what I want, strive for excellence and virtue. If that is the goal in a free society, then you want the government out of the way. Because when government gets in the way, they ruin the whole thing. They just mess things up. But too often, we make this assumption that government will be there, it will take care of us, and everything is going to be all right. Our experiment with liberty has been the greatest experiment in the history of the world. And we became the most prosperous, we had the largest middle class, and we were a creditor nation. Today, we owe $5 trillion. We have a middle class that's shrinking and getting poorer. We have now the standard of living for the average American has been going down for 12 years. That's why people feel badly about the way it is today. And the unemployment rate for certain categories, the young teenagers, college graduates, it's very, very tough. And so when the government comes along, and today they made the announcement, the unemployment rate just went down. But what the problem is they don't count everybody. The people who drop out, they don't count. And the people who stop looking for work, and there were 34 million new people in the last 10 years. Essentially, no new jobs have been created. So there's really a serious problem with the unemployment. And it's because we've had a managed economy for a long time. We have been taught by the liberal professors that the reason we get into recessions, the people won't spend the money. Of course, how do you spend the money if you don't have a job and you're all maxed out on credit cards? You can't spend money. So they recognize that possibility, and the Bernankes of the world say, you know what we need to do is the government then needs to spend the money, and deficits don't matter. And the truth is, deficits do matter. And we've lived too long on the assumptions that governments are different than individuals. But individuals who live beyond their means eventually live beneath their means. And countries that do the same thing will live beneath their means, and that is what we're ushering in, an age right now of living beneath our means. And that is the reason we have to have significant changes. And it's not going back to the old days, the old age and the old standard, the gold standard. I mean, what is old is tyranny. And the other side wants to go back and have more tyranny and more authoritarianism. So what we want to do is go back and pick up the pieces of what a free society was all about and build on it, have a better gold standard, a better understanding of foreign policy and economic policy. If we fail to do this, I can tell you, if only 10 people showed up tonight, I would have been a little bit discouraged. But now I continue to be encouraged because I think the changes will come, and they are going to come. And which means if we lose a battle here and there, don't get discouraged, because we're going to win the war. And we have a better advantage than any other country because we have great traditions. We did have the freest society. We have a good document if we'd only follow it. We knew once what sound money was all about. We had a good concept of private property and contract rights. Today, of course, the government cancels contracts more than they enforce contracts. We used to have a good, sound understanding about private property rights. That's been under systematic attack. So when we get to this point of returning and picking up those pieces, we can restate those principles of sound money and property rights and contract rights, a sensible foreign policy and balanced budgets. And the emphasis on, the most important issue, is the emphasis on the individual. The individuals who have, we all have this natural right, not because we belong to a group. We should never get benefits because we belong to a group, and we should never get any disadvantages because we belong to a group. And if that is the case, I believe we will all come together, and the groups will be diverse. And I think our campaign has demonstrated this, because one of the real challenges is going to some of the Republican primary debates. And because the message is a message for more people than just in a narrow group. Because it is a message for fiscal conservatives, it's a message for those who believe in civil liberties, it's a message who wants a different foreign policy. And instead of compromising our principles and saying, well, I'll give this and maybe try to bring people together, that's what they did for decades. The liberals and conservatives got together in spending. And of course they exhausted all the wealth. But now we can't have that type of compromise. We have to stand on principles that will appeal to different groups and bring people together for different reasons. And that issue is individualism and freedom for that individual. Because there's so much positive activity going on in the country today, I am optimistic that by doing this, that we will have the best chance of not only restoring peace to this country, that we will restore prosperity to this country, and once again restore the greatness of America, which we all should strive for. Thank you very much for coming.